RusConnect is a video series that informs people about the business and personal ties between disreputable and criminal businessmen from the former Soviet Union and the Trump family and administration. RusConnect also seeks to reveal the nature of the Vladimir Putin regime and the danger that it and the oligarchs from the former Soviet Union pose to global democracy and finance. Hi, I'm Alexandra Woods. I'm a clinical psychologist and a citizen journalist. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Vadim Birstein, a biologist and historian whose expertise is Soviet and Russian espionage. Dr. Birstein has published over 200 scientific papers and is the author of 2 scholarly history books, The Perversion of Knowledge, The True Story of Soviet Science, and Smersh, Stalin's Secret Weapon, Soviet Military Counterintelligence in World War II. Welcome, Dr. Birstein.
Hi, Alexandra. Thank you very much for having me here.
It's a pleasure. Many people know the name KGB, but I don't think many people really understand what it is. Can you give us a little background?
Okay, briefly, very briefly. KGB is an acronym for the Russian words Комитет государственной безопасности, which means Committee on State Security. It was a huge and monolithic, extremely huge agency that included various branches of security services, except military intelligence, which was traditionally separate in the Soviet system. The motto of KGB was that it was the sword and shield of the Communist Party. And for this purpose, it was created at the beginning of Soviet Union. For us, it would be important to know about 2 of its branches. First, KGB main directorate, which was foreign intelligence, and the second main directorate, which was counterintelligence. The counterintelligence purpose and goal was fighting spies and traitors within the Soviet Union, and all foreigners who came into the Soviet Union were under surveillance of this service. First of all, foreigners couldn't stay in any hotel. Foreigners were staying only in the hotels of the so-called in-tourist company system, which was practically controlled by the KGB. People on every floor of the hotels, there were sitting ladies at the desk who were watching every person who entered the rooms or went out of the rooms and reported to superiors. There was even a floor in each hotel with a secret location of KGB officers, and all guides and translators needed to receive instructions from these officers and then to report to officers what happened during the time when they were in contact with a foreigner. The people in plain clothes were, of course, in the lobbies of those hotels and in restaurants and so on and so on. So you couldn't escape the attention of these secret counterintelligence officers.
Thank you.
Everybody feared the KGB because it's from Stalin's times. It was absolutely secretive organization which uncontrolled by anybody, I mean common people, and they could arrest you and do what they want.
So how did Putin rise to power?
Well, here I would like to go a little bit in a psychological profile of Putin, if I can describe it. One needs to imagine a boy who was born to a quite poor family of a worker and living in quite tough conditions of communal apartment in Leningrad. A communal apartment, it was, Americans do not know what it is. It is when many families lived in one apartment. In each room there was a family, but all of them shared one kitchen and one bathroom. And sometimes, especially in Petersburg, the apartments were extremely big, up to 20 rooms. That's why it was a quite tough life. And Putin was physically small, but extremely ambitious, definitely, and wanted power. How a boy of that time could get power. I'm older, a few years older than Putin. I remember that time. I know those conditions. I know what happened in the streets of Moscow and Leningrad at that time. And basically for such kind of boy, street gang was the main place.
The street gang.
A street gang, which boy could find somebody who some power. Putin sometimes recalls about this experience in his speeches. For instance, in one of speeches, he said that he is aggressive because the streets of Leningrad taught him to hit enemy first. The main power for a street boy was to join the KGB. As a teenager, Putin went to the regional KGB office in Leningrad and asked how he could join the KGB. The officers told him that at first he needs to go to university, Leningrad University, and be educated in law, which he did. He graduated from the law department of Leningrad University, and after that he joined the KGB. At first he was trained as a counterintelligence officer and worked for a while as a counterintelligence officer. Then he entered Foreign Intelligence High School, which is called now SVR Academy, the institution which trains officers to be spies, Russian spies. And after a year of this additional training, Putin was sent in 1985. He was sent to Dresden in Germany.
Apparently, understanding the KGB and the FSB is central to understanding Vladimir Putin. How did this organization affect his personality and worldview? Anything you want to add to that?
The world of KGB is a special world. KGB officers, and it doesn't matter if it's KGB, FSB, foreign intelligence or military intelligence, is the same world of people who consider themselves as being a brotherhood of Chekists. Cheka was the first organization of security services in Soviet Russia. It is legendary within security officers, and they still call themselves Chekists. This has special meaning for them because it's a real brotherhood, like mafia brotherhood. They consider themselves special. They consider themselves extremely powerful. They consider themselves untouchable. They have this feeling of belonging to special, superior people. And usually if somebody comes out of this brotherhood, in their minds betrays them, this traitor is killed. Sometimes they really kill these supposedly traitors, as we know from example of Alexander Litvinenko, who was poisoned in London a few years, 10 years ago. I need to add that there was no resignation from that brotherhood. Russians say, and Putin says, that Chekist is always a Chekist. If they retire, they're not really retired because at any point they can be called back. It's forever. After Soviet Union fell apart, Putin worked for some time for the first mayor of now St. Petersburg, Anatoly Sobchak. During those years, he was involved in a few corruption scandals. But after Sobchak was not re-elected as a mayor, in 1996, Putin was transferred to Moscow, and he worked in the department that managed presidential property. At that time, Boris Yeltsin was Russian president. Finally, in 1998, Yeltsin appointed Putin head of the FSB, descendant of the KGB, but without the foreign intelligence part. In 1999, Yeltsin appointed him as his successor. Yeltsin resigned in December 1999, and Putin was at first acting president, and then a year later he was elected as a president. It's not absolutely clear how all this very fast Putin's career happened in Moscow, but it's clear that partly it was because of Putin's first law he signed. It was a law forbidding the prosecution of Yeltsin and his family, at the time accused of many corruptions in various fields. Well,
so he protected Yeltsin, and
yes,
that's how
he
to power.
acquired this post with the understanding of protection of Yeltsin.
I see. So what do you think that Putin's priorities are as president? What is most important to him?
Well, to understand Putin's priorities, one needs to remember that Putin said and repeats from time to time that for him the falling of Soviet Union was the main catastrophe of the 20th century. Part of Soviet Union became independent from Russia. This is the main catastrophe in his opinion. His Putin's talks now is about the restoration in some way of something which would remind of the Soviet Union.
So that is his goal.
Yes, it's his goal to make Russia great, which means to some extent to restore Soviet Union.
Where does this determination that Russia must be a great superpower come from?
First of all, not many people understand that Russia considers this type of Russians. They consider Russia to be the third Rome,
the third Rome?
No, the first Rome in Italy was the first Rome. Then, after Rome was conquered by barbarians, Constantinople became the second Rome as keeper of Christianity and basically be the symbol of Christianity. Then, when Ottoman Turks destroyed, conquered Constantinople, Russia declared itself as being the third Rome. That Russia is destined in history is to be this leading Christian country for the whole world with all these conservative values. This is extremely important part of the whole ideology of restoration of Great Russia. And that's why Russia was, and Putin personally were so disturbed when Ukraine became a separate country and didn't want to be controlled by Russian puppets. Because in their minds, in their mentality, all Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians are Slavs, but Russians are better Slavs than others. From 9th to 12th century, there was a big state which covered the current Ukrainian, Belarus, and some part of Russia. And the country had the capital in Kiev, and it was called Kiev Rus. The Mongol invasion in the 13th century completely disrupted this situation, and most of the population of Kiev Rus was simply killed off. In the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, a new state with the center of Moscow appeared, and that part was not connected with what is Ukraine now. Ukraine and Belarus were parts of Poland and Lithuania for many centuries. That's why a serious difference appeared, and so on and so on. Current Russia is a continuation of that Moscow principate, which was built up beginning from 15th century, not before that.
But even so, there's such a sense of history that we Americans don't understand. I mean, whether we're talking about the 9th century or the 15th century, there's a sense of destiny.
Yes, but without, it's American problem, because without these historical details, you cannot really understand the European mentality at all. The same situation was in Yugoslavia, when Yugoslavia fell apart and all these wars started and so on. Why? It's nonsense, of course, because people were talking about something which happened 500 years ago, but they still were fighting. But this is Europe, this is how it works, what to say.
Can you explain Putin's attraction to the Russian people?
Or attractions of Russian people to Putin? Well, no, I think that common Russian people in many cases see Putin as their representative. He's like us. He was nobody, he was from a poor family, and he made this fabulous career. He is so tough, he became a strong guy who shows his strengths. And it's very important to stress the fact that Russians understand power and strength as physical strength. It's not all military strength. It's not any kind of intellectual superiority, no physical strength. If you can hit your enemy in the face, or as a military power which overcomes any other army. It has deep roots. There is a very well-known story about Stalin. When Stalin, it was in the late 40s, when Pope criticized in Vatican something about Soviet Union, Stalin asked his general, well, how many military divisions this Pope has? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, this is their understanding, their psychology, that only physical or military power counts. That's why Putin, who is a very good psychologist, he was trained by KGB, and they train counterintelligence, intelligence very deeply in psychology. And a populist who knows how to survive and talk to people and so on, he does what Russian people expect from their leader. He is using this idea of military superiority every time when his popularity goes a little bit down. He simply announced a new patriotic war. When he was just appointed for raising popularity or even to acquire popularity, he started the second war in Chechnya. Then, after a while, he needed a little bit. At first, his economy was extremely going well because of extreme high prices for oil, but then something was not so good. Well, he organized a war with Georgia, and as a result, Georgia lost a big chunk of their country. Then there was a war with Ukraine, which is still continues to in some kind of a proxy war or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the seizure of Crimea, it was absolutely something that united Russian people. They praised Putin for that, and still are praising that. They like that some piece of Ukraine was acquired. Now something again was not so good. We see military actions in Syria. Mm-hmm. This is a pattern. And Putin, of course, knows that Russians, common Russians and layman Russians, they understand that if they have war and victory in war, it is means that Russia is great. Great Russia, it means a lot for common people. Of course he is popular, but possibly not to the numbers which are given in polls. People are afraid of the government. That's why when some polling agency, asks a person, especially in rural places, in small towns, what do you think about regime or Putin? Of course, they say, I'm fond of everything.
Polls show that 50% of Republicans have a positive view of Russia and Vladimir Putin, which is a real shift from their historical position. What do you have to say to these people?
I don't know why these people do not see the evident facts. Putin is practically a dictator of Russia. Almost all positions you can imagine, it's his appointees. There is no election of governors. All of them are appointees. Now Putin, as I said, had this army of 340,000 servicemen devoted only to him, to Putin. I don't know why any American likes this kind of political regime when one person really in charge of everything and everything reports to only one person without any opposition. Opposition is not possible. No real election could be organized because opposition cannot have, for instance, time on TV. There's no, all main stations belong to the government, that nobody can buy time for statement of political platform as a opposition and so on. There is now one leader of, not leader, but one extremely charismatic person, Alexei Navalny, who produces with a group of people excellent exposés of corruption in Russia, including Prime Minister of Russia, Medvedev. But he has no opportunity even to make an election announcements. Mm-hmm. When he rents a hall, at the last moment something happens and for some reason the hall is closed. All his groups in other cities are really terrified. Some of his people are arrested. Arrests are random in Russia. Anybody can be arrested for nothing.
Do you think that Putin will ever relinquish power?
If everything goes as it goes now, there is no other person who could become a president. There is no way. Putin created the system when he is forever.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you would want Republicans to know something of what you're saying, to understand that.
I'd like them to to be more educated in this field. Mm-hmm. About Russian history, about Russian mentality, about Russian current regime especially.